All righty. Well, good afternoon, good morning, good evening, whatever time it is, wherever you are. My name is Andrea Brockmeyer, and I'll be with you here for the next half hour and talk about PMI certification. And I'm the Director of Project Management here at Watermark Learning and have been around the certification scene for a good many years and have developed materials and delivered courses for PMI, PMP, ACP, and PBA certification. So we've got some upcoming classes that you may be interested in. Our PBA class coming up starting October 30th. That is a live virtual online class. And our PMP class just finished one up yesterday. We've got another one coming up in December, and that'll be live in person in Minneapolis. And of course, we have our Anytime Learning classes as well. So you will get a copy of these slides following today's session, in addition to access to the recording. So we've got some special discounts coming your way as well after our time today. So be on the lookout for those in your email. So some things in our time together today, just some links that you may be interested in regarding some of the certification questions that you may have. There's some things at PMI, there's some things on our website, so this may just be a quick stop here for you to get any questions you have answered, just for easy reference. So one of the things that people ask about is where to start with certification. You're interested in certification, and so there may be a question, where to begin. There just seems to be a lot of stuff out there. And so I always recommend that people take a look at the handbook for a particular certification. And every PMI certification has a very nice handbook that goes into a lot of detail about how to apply, what constitutes, contact hours or experience appropriate for your certification, how to apply, the steps that you go through. So that's very handy. And in addition, the exam content outline, or the ECO, which is the blueprint for the exam. Both of those are very helpful when you're getting started. So you just go to pmi.org, click on your certification, and in the right margin, you'll see both of those documents. They're free, and you just download and print them out if you want, or whatever. And then, of course, any relevant PMI standards. So if that's the Pmbok or a practice guide, and we'll take a look at those here today as well. So those are really the good things to start with. Just kind of get your hands on those and kind of get your resources collected. So the other thing I recommend is that you get started on your application, getting your application completed and submitted. If you're taking a class in order to get contact hours, of course, then you can't submit it until you've done that. But in the event that you can get it completed, I always tell my students, get that application in, get approved, and schedule that exam and work backwards from that, because it just really is a way to help you stay focused and to keep you moving. Otherwise, this stuff is very easy to get away from you. So, and even if you do need your contact hours from a class, just get that application taken care of. Then you've kind of got all of that sort of administrative stuff done. We have some worksheets on our website that can help people collect their thoughts around their experience. They parse out your experience by domain or process group as appropriate. So it can just be a kind of a safe way to collect your experience details and capture those in a spreadsheet. These are not spreadsheets that you submit to PMI. There's nothing official about these. These are simply documents that we have created to help you organize your thoughts and experience about what you're going to need to put into the application online. I will also say that PMI's online applications are very easy to use. I find their interfaces to be pretty clear. It's pretty intuitive. You can sign on, set up an account with PMI even without joining for free, and get your application started and save it and go back to it. They'll save it for 90 days. They'll deactivate it after 90 days, but even if you reactivate after 90 days, anything you've entered is still there. So it's a pretty easy interface, and I would, again, encourage you to get started with that if that's something, if certification is something you are moving towards. So in terms of ACP requirements, you need to have 1,500 hours, eight months of Agile experience, totaling at least 1,500 hours within the last 3 years. So that can be any experience utilizing Agile methods and approaches to things. Plus you need 2,000 hours, 12 months covering at least 2,000 hours or including at least 2,000 hours of general project experience in any role. So you could have been a team member, an SME, within the last 5 years. And if you already have a PMP, then that general project experience, you've already qualified for that. So for those that have PMPs, this is the requirements here are pretty simple. So those are the experience requirements. Now, as with all PMI certifications, just a quick note, you can have overlapping projects and experience, but it will only count in terms of the hours. It won't count in terms of months, right? So if I'm working on 2 projects in the month of March, that's 1 month of experience, not 2 months of experience. And then they will they may or may not count all of the hours that you had on 2 projects in 1 month or multiple projects in 1 month. It kind of depends on how those total out, because you can't have, you know, an excessive number of hours within a particular month. Now, you also need 21 contact hours, and that's training on any Agile practices. There's no time limit on that, and your time, your contact hours or education training in Agile has to be completed before sitting for the exam. So resources for the Pmi-ACP, here is the handbook and the exam content outline, ECO. And then there are a couple of pulse of the profession. So PMI publishes these pulses of, you know, the pulse of the profession periodically. And I think I always recommend taking a look at those. You don't have to study them or anything, but they can be good ways of, you know, communing with the language that PMI uses for that you want to be familiar with and comfortable with for certification. It's a good way to kind of get their take on things and really get their perspective on things. So these were just a couple of examples of some of the things that you might want to take a look at. Again, not for the purpose of studying or memorizing, but just take a look at those. And then the big resources are, let's see here. Then we've got our course, and this is a great anytime learning or online course that works great for as an ATL, our anytime learning, the Pmi-ACP. And so somebody asked a question about highlight changes to this exam, to the ACP exam after March 26th of this year. And that was related to the updates to the Pmbok. So as you know, the project management body of knowledge, or you may not know, was updated and released, the 6th edition released in March, at the end of March this year. And it ships now with the Agile Practice Guide, the PMI Agile Practice Guide. So the main update to the exam pertained to making sure that the language is consistent in the exam with that standard, that practice guide. So for all intents and purposes, there were not major dramatic changes to the ACP exam, largely because the PMI Agile Practice Guide is a pretty good document, pretty consistent with the other Agile things out there. So everything that we have is totally consistent and works for what you need to pass the current version of the ACP exam. So all of our resources are consistent with that, including our online study exam. So we've got practice questions that you can get, and that you can get rather to help you prepare for that ACP exam. So this works really great. You get all your contact hours with this self-study approach, and you get your and get access to study questions as well. So the other document, and hang on just a moment here. Okay. Somewhere, for some reason. Just real quickly. Oh, well, for whatever reason, there's some images not showing there. But the other key resources for the ACP are the Agile Practice Guide, which you don't see here, and to a lesser extent, the Pmbok. You really don't need to spend a whole lot of time with that. What you might want to do is read sections that pertain to managing projects in an adaptive environment, but you certainly don't need to spend a lot of time with it like you would, say, for the PMP. So I'm not sure what happened to my images. Sorry about that. So the PBA, anything else? Anybody have any other questions? And you feel free to ask along the way here. I know we don't have a whole lot of time, but if you've got questions, just go ahead and put them in the question box there, and I'll answer them as I go. I hope I answered the question about the ACP there. The PBA is another certification. You need some experience there, and there are two categories. Either you have a college degree or you do not. If you do not, you need 7,500 hours or 5 years of experience totaling at least 7,500 hours of business analysis experience within the context of projects or programs. If you do have a degree, 3 years of experience totaling at least 4,500 hours, again, of business analysis experience working within projects or programs. And then you also need some general project experience or project management, experience working on projects. And so that's above and beyond those 45 or 7,500 hours. However, if that experience that you had doing business analysis was within the context of a project, it was project experience, then that will count. So you wouldn't need the additional. So I'm sorry, I need to rephrase that. So the business analysis experience you need is just general business analysis experience. And then you need 2,000 hours of experience working on projects. If your BA experience was done within the context of projects or programs, then you don't need the additional experience, the additional 2,000 hours. And again, if you have a PMP or a PGMP, you already qualify for the 2,000 hours of project experience, so you don't need that. And so then also contact hours, you need 35 hours of training in business analysis practices. There's no time limit on that, and that has to be done before you submit your application to certify. Okay, so resources for that include the handbook and the exam content outline, and then the real key documents are the business guide to business analysis, the business analysis for practitioners, a practice guide, and the requirements management, a practice guide. I usually recommend that people take a look at that as well, although certainly it isn't as key as the practice guide and the guide to BA. But it's a good document. It's got in particular an image that shows how project management processes and BA processes work together. So it's not real lengthy, and I usually recommend that people just take a look at that as well. So those are some of those key resources. We also have a class, of course, boot camp for PBA certification, and we are running that class in October that provides all 35 contact hours. This will be, all of our resources are now consistent with the updates that occurred in June. So the PBA exam was updated the end of June, just a few months ago, in order to be consistent with the guide to business analysis that we just took a look at, which was just released less than a year ago. So our materials and our boot camp are consistent with that. We just released our PBA study guide as well, and so we're very excited about that. So this is our second edition. This has been updated to accommodate and address the new material from the Guide to Business Analysis, and we've got updated materials in there, updated test questions. We've got a great fold out that identifies the tasks from the exam content outline and how that works with the processes in the Guide to Business Analysis. So we're pretty excited about this study guide. People have had great success with our study guide, and we're really happy to have that updated so we can keep moving ahead with the revised exam. And then our online study exam, we've got over 800 questions for PBA practice. And these are really, really great questions. These questions were developed with input from folks that have worked with standards and worked with PMI and in the development of their standards. So those are really great questions. So lots of great resources there for the PMI PBA. All right, and then the PMP. Not sure if anybody is interested in the PMP. There are many PMPs out there, of course. You need 5 years of experience, totaling at least 7,500 hours of project management experience if you do not have a degree, or 3 years of experience, totaling at least 4,500 hours. If you do have a degree, and then that has to be within the last 8 years, and you also need then 35 contact hours of training and project management practices. No time limit on that, and that has to be completed before submitting your application as well. So the key resources for that include the pertinent handbook and exam content outline, and then of course the project management body of knowledge and the 6th edition. So this is a beast of a document, and so I've kind of revised my recommendations since the release of this to students in terms of how to approach this. It's 756 pages. They're thin pages, and they're this awful gray that makes it very difficult to read. And so it's just a lot to digest. So I used to tell people you need to read the Pmbok at least once. That's just really a lot to take in. So there is, that's about how you feel. So there really is a way to break it down. There are various parts of the Pmbok, and so I'm recommending that people just make a note that there's part 1, which includes the introduction and the environment, the role of the PM, and all of the knowledge areas. That's the bulk of the Pmbok. And then there's, starting on page 539, part 2, which is the standard. And I really recommend people start with the standard. Read this. It's a little higher level. It describes the processes by process group, which is really how the exam is organized. And it includes the benefits of the processes while you're doing them, inputs and outputs, but it doesn't have all the distraction with all of the tools. That's not the be-all, end-all. You will need to go back and read part 1. And, in particular, the introduction, environment, role, the PM, and everything. And you're going to have to spend some time in those knowledge areas, kind of taking deep dives in those knowledge areas. But it's really best to start here, I think, with this part 2, just to kind of get your bearings. It's just too much otherwise. It's too daunting. Also, you want to make a note of part 3, some appendices and the glossary and the index and some good things there to take a look at. They've got these various sections or various comments in each section in part 1 there relative to each knowledge area in terms of trends, key concepts, and how the processes can get applied in adaptive environments. And then these appendices collect all these. So Appendix X3, for example, is all of the agile, iterative, adaptive, how do we apply this in various types of environments all in one place? All of the trends, rather than reading about the trends in schedule management, cost management, quality management separately, they're all collected together. So that's pretty helpful. and tailoring considerations. That's pretty helpful. So, and then also the tools and techniques in Appendix X6, that is a handy place as well to take a look at all of the just so many tools and techniques, and you can see where they are referenced, where they're defined, and where are they used. So I find that to be pretty helpful. Just a way to kind of break it down. It's just too much otherwise. All right, in our PMP resources, we've got our boot camp as well, and that includes lots of practice questions, a mobile flashcard app, and lots of other great resources for PMP certification prep. Again, we've got our December class coming up that provides all 35 contact hours, and so that's good stuff. So just in general, some certification things to note. One, when you're getting ready for a PMI certification, be aware that you will have to think about who are the contacts who can verify your experience. So you want to think about who could I get in touch with if I had to, that would be able to say, yes, they actually did this work. It doesn't have to be your boss. It doesn't have to have been the sponsor of a project. It doesn't have to have been your supervisor, but somebody that could say that, yes, they did that. Don't worry about your title. This is not a title exercise. It's about the work that you did. So you may or may not have had the title project manager or business analyst or scrum master. It's really about the work that you've done. And then be prepared to be audited. A handful of applications get audited. For the most part, those are random audits. It's nothing to be concerned about. In terms of, for the most part, they're not that you haven't, it's not that you've done anything wrong. Sometimes there may be something that'll flag something that may not seem right, but the majority of the audits are just the result of random audits that they're doing as part of their quality control. And then use that exam content outline. That exam content outline is really a helpful document. It not only describes really the outline of the exam, but it can be a good source for trying to figure out how to describe your experience. One of the things that people struggle with often is how do I describe my experience in the application? I don't really know how to identify or explain what it is that I did. Use the tasks in that exam content outline as a guide to describing your experience. So I always like to take a look at the numbers in terms of how many people have PMI certifications. And so you can see here that we've got the years that these were first offered, and year-over-year growth for these we have here in the middle column, and then you can see year-to-date growth here, and I think the two that are particularly noteworthy are the PBA and the ACP. So that PBA, the PMI PBA, is the fastest growing exam of PMIs. The raw numbers aren't so compelling at this point, but this has been, since its release, the fastest growing exam by far. You can see that 80% growth last year. And so that's really just going to continue as the emphasis that organizations are placing on good business analysis and the impact that that has on their organizations. This certification is really going to continue to grow, I believe. And of course, they're not PMI isn't the only one that has BA certification, so the certs from IIBA and other places. But this is the PBA really is a great certification, and I think PMPs that are doing business analysis, which is often the case, PMs and BAs often doing that hybrid role and wearing both hats. This is a great opportunity to take advantage of your certification, and you don't have as much work in terms of the application, and really refine your skills and your understanding about the delineation between your work as a BA and PM. It's just a really great professional development path for folks doing that dual role. So my pop quiz question. What is more fun than studying for a PMI exam? Everything is more fun than studying for a PMI exam. So I always tell folks you got to make sure you just commit to doing a little something every day. Once you decide to move down the path of pursuing a certification, you've got to make the commitment to do a little something every day, even if it's just 5 minutes with flashcards. Just don't let it get away from you, because laundry is more fun than studying for a PMI exam. So there's just never going to be a good time. So that's why I say get that application done as soon as you can, get that exam scheduled, and work backwards from that. 7 days a week, folks. Every 24-hour period, one thing for each little box on the calendar. It's got to be an everyday thing. So my top 10 for preparing to take a PMI certification exam. Do some kind of prep every day. Practice your brain dump to do when the exam starts. So you will have an opportunity to just jot down some things that you have in mind. Could be equations, could be names of processes, and we talk more about this in our boot camps, but you'll have an opportunity to write some things down once your exam starts, just a way of kind of purging things that you've committed to memory. You want to practice that. It helps you get ready, helps you make good use of that time, and helps you think about what are the key things that you want to remember. Keep studying until you get into the 80% on practice tests. Use our flashcards that come with our courses. Many of our courses have flashcards, or create your own. That's a great study exercise. Get some inexpensive note cards and just create your own flashcards as you're studying. Study one chapter, domain, or knowledge area at a time, and do deep dives in, cost management, or planning, or team development, whatever area you're in, and really focus on that and read multiple sources, and focus on that particular area and take test questions on that particular area. And then when you've done that on all of them, all of the various areas, then do more of a horizontal approach and read the resources and do simulations, or get practice tests that include all the areas in the mix. Get a study buddy. Teach them what you don't know. One of the best ways, and trust me, from someone who's been doing this a long time, one of the best ways to learn something is to teach it. So partner with somebody and say, hey, I'm really not getting that quality management stuff. You got 20 minutes? I want to tell you all about it. And it will force you to really have to understand a particular topic. A study buddy, also somebody to celebrate with when you pass. Read the Pmbok guide, or the Agile Practice Guide, or the PMI Guide to Business Analysis. Whatever standards there are, read them, and the key resources at least once. So again, the Pmbok, you're not going to be able to do that cover to cover, but really there is no substitute for reading those. So you can focus on some other things like our study guide, but you are going to have to read the other resources. They aren't a substitute for spending some time with those other key resources. Plan to commit at least 40 hours at a minimum to prepping for the exam, and that does not include time you might spend in a boot camp. And then number one, know thyself. Different things work for different folks. So, we talk about flashcards. There are, practice tests, writing things down, saying things. There's audio for many courses, different approaches to studying and digesting material. You got to do what works for you. And it's a good thing there's lots of options, because not the same thing works for everybody. So that is the practice, or the top 10 for certification prep. And that brings us just about to our 12:30 time spot here. So any questions at all that anybody has? And you certainly can reach out to me individually if you've got questions. I'd be glad to help. Does anybody have any other questions you can think of? All right. Well, I think we'll call it good then, and thank you very much, folks. I wish you all the very best on your certification journey, and I'd love to hear how you do, and I hope that Watermark can partner with you and help you achieve your professional development goals. So good luck. Thank you so much, and everybody have a great rest of your day. Thanks so much.